Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons. My guest today is Rochell Goff, and we're going to talk about Vacation Bible School and especially about VBS as an evangelistic tool. Rochell, thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Let me tell you a couple things about Rochell. She is the Director of Families at Sojourn Midtown Church in Louisville. She has her MDiv in Children's Ministry from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. She's been in camp ministry and in children's ministry for most of her adult life. She has attended, been the musical leader, and directed more VBSs than she can count. One year she was even featured in the missions video for a Lifeway Missions moment. So Rochell, you have a lot of experience in this area, a lot of experience in working with children and families. It's your heart to see children grow and to understand the gospel, to live out a relationship with God. Tell us about your own testimony. Tell us how you came to know the Lord and how you ended up in Christian ministry leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. I became a Christian when I was 10 years old. Okay. I was at the church I grew up in Monticello, Kentucky, Elk Spring Valley Baptist Church, and it was on a Sunday night. And Pastor McKinley just preached the word, and I was like, I'm a sinner and I need Jesus. And so as we did back in the 90s, I went up front and prayed with the pastor and was baptized shortly after that, a couple Sundays later. And I've just been walking with the Lord and just trying to pursue his will in my life. Pretty much ministry, I just kept, as I went to college and was deciding what to do during summers and those kinds of things, it was like, I'm going to go do summer missions. And it just kept being ministry. And then worked for the North American Mission Board after college. And it was ministry focused and in New Orleans. And then just kept doing ministry. And then the Lord, I definitely did not want to do graduate work, but the Lord called me to seminary, and that's why I went. And so then when deciding where to go and what to do, it was definitely like children's ministry. As I've been moving towards my adult life, it is just like working with kids, investing in kids, just seeing their precious hearts, like wanting to know more about the gospel. And so, yeah, and then camp ministry brought me to Louisville, and I've been here ever since, and just have been been blessed by a lot of opportunities that the Lord has given me. And so that's just kind of like, I just kept saying yes. And that's how I'm here. And that's how where I'm at in my current ministry.
And you have a wide variety of ministry background and experience. So Elk Lake Spring is a rural church near Monticello. You were on staff at Walnut Street here in Louisville, which is kind of a downtown church. Now you're at Sojourn Midtown, which is one of the more diverse churches. Plus, you worked at Crossings Camp, so you have a wide variety of experience.
Yep.
Rochell, the term.
Go ahead.
Please.
I lived in New Orleans, which was a very that's where kind of that urban ministry type thing. I got that from just being in New Orleans. I didn't know what I was getting into when I went there, but lived and worked in the inner city there too. And so that was just, urban ministry is really deep set in my bones too. So I'm really thankful for where the Lord has me.
Sounds like you just said yes to God at an early point, and he keeps directing your steps.
Yep.
Which seems the way the Christian life is supposed to work. Well, Rochell, the term Vacation Bible School has been used for years and years. There could be people who really might not understand what that is, possibly the church where you serve. So if somebody says, what is a Vacation Bible School? How do you answer that question? What's the purpose of it?
Yeah. I just tell people, we call it VBS. We kind of shortened it, which I think a lot of churches have, to VBS. And when people are like, what is VBS? I'm like, it is a 5-day intensive of fun, games, and gospel. And we get to explore the Bible together and answer questions that we might have about the Bible. And then at the same time, have snacks and sing songs and play games. So it's a great time for friends to be together. And as kids, there are rare times when they get to spend 5 days in a row doing something that they love to do, and come to a place and see the same people. There's school, but then that's different. School's way different than VBS. So I think that's how I explain it, is just, we have adults who want to care and invest in your child, and we want to share the gospel with them. And so I'm always very upfront about, we want to make sure that they understand who Jesus is.
Yeah, who wouldn't? I mean, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
So, Rochell, everything pulls on a church's calendar. They're going to do so many things. If you were talking to someone who's trying to decide, should we even do a VBS? make the case for why VBS is important for a local church.
Yeah, VBS has been proven over and over again one of the most, and in some churches, the only evangelistic push that a church has. And so we are called to take the gospel to the nations, and oftentimes that can start with a family. I think VBS is it's a low risk opportunity for families to send their kids into a church. Oftentimes, we'll have kids who are Muslim or have never walked into a church before or come from a different religious background, and their parents will send them to VBS simply because they know it's safe, they know it's fun, and it's a good outlet for their kids. Whether you have it in June or July, school's been out for a while, and it's a great way. And so I think when you talk it in that framework, I mean, what church pastor or ministry leaders wouldn't want to have an evangelistic opportunity like that?
Yeah, if you have 5 days to share the gospel with children, not in a pressurized situation, but just for a goal of understanding, if they could just leave understanding the gospel, leaving room for the Holy Spirit to work. So, Rochell, there's so many details involved in Vacation Bible School. I mean, I can't imagine what you go through every year and the workers that you work with, any VBS director, whether it's a staff person or a volunteer. Theme, recruiting volunteers, finding enough workers, getting everyone organized. How do you keep the gospel front and center with all of those other things that are going on? How do you personally do that?
Yeah, I think praying is what does it. I think for Midtown specifically, it is finding all the volunteers, making sure, and I'm just like, okay, Lord, you want us to have VBS, so you're going to have to do this. And so not getting caught up in the itty bitty like details of decorations and what craft we're going to do, but like making sure that you're taking time to pray and then the week of VBS, I think it's so important for leaders, the adults, to gather together before the kids walk in the door to pray and to get into the word, even if it's like a psalm or if you're going over the story for that night, like introduce the gospel, make sure that the gospel is front and center, because that's why we do VBS. If VBS was about decorations and crafts, I would say no thank you, because it's too much stress, it's too much everything. But when we keep the forefront of the gospel is why we do VBS, then we get to understand that, hey, this is why we're doing this. And so if it's not all perfect, it's okay. We want to make sure that we proclaim the gospel. And so just keeping it at the forefront of my mind in January, as I start thinking about VBS, in March and in April and May, and especially in June, as it comes closer and closer and closer, that praying can be like, oh, I don't have time for that. But it is literally the most important thing I could do, is praying for the kids that are going to come through the doors, and praying that the hearts will be transformed, and that some child there would cross over from death to life, that they would see a heart of stone to become a heart of flesh. So I continue to pray for that. And then everything else lines up when you have that perspective of like, okay, this is why we're doing it. It really helps.
So, Rochell, you mentioned perspective, and your perspective is different than anyone else's in the church. Everyone has their part of VBS, but you're trying to lead the larger effort, and you're praying about it from January forward. So, can you think of a time where you just really saw God provide in a unique way, or do something that you were praying about, or a time when you weren't sure it was going to come together, and the Lord just kind of came through? You probably have 100 of those.
Yeah.
Does anything come to mind?
I do. Well, I have a terrible memory, so I'm going to go with last year.
Okay.
I think like 2 weeks before VBS, I had 2 people at Midtown who were like helping me lead it last year. And, they were very stressed out, and because we didn't have enough people to serve. And literally like within mere days of us starting, by the time Monday night hit and we started VBS, we had like 80 volunteers. Wow. And that was, the 2 weeks before, we only had like 40. Like the Lord doubled the number of people. And it was the easiest VBS that I've probably ever experienced, because there were so many people. Now, was there still like bumps in the road? Absolutely. But the Lord just provided the people that we needed just in the right amount of time, where it just made it easier and calmer, and just was so thankful that the Lord provided those people, at the last minute, but they were provided. They were there, and it was exciting.
Well, good for you, and good for Sojourn Midtown to have you leading that charge and to lead it with that gospel heart as well as a trusting the Lord for prayer. So, how does knowing that VBS is a great means of sharing the gospel, how does that help you when you're training volunteers, or how does it impact the way that you train volunteers for VBS?
Yeah, I think, as I'm training volunteers, we have the stories, we have all the curriculum that they give, no matter what curriculum, what um, publishing company you're using, or whatever curriculum you write, or whatever you're doing. There's so many details in it, and it can be very overwhelming. And so I think that, again, as we like talk and I'm training people, the first thing that we do is we pray before we get started, and then we just walk through the material. I think that the walk through the material in a way that helps them understand, and then breaking them up into smaller groups so they can talk about all the details, and then making sure that they spend time in prayer um, as they're before they leave. The snack rotation people, listen, my snack rotation people are a family.
Yeah.
They all worked together last year, and they made a pact to all work together again this year.
So
and they were like, I'm only doing snack if so and so is like also like, I told them we'd remain a pack, but like creating little small families and little small groups of just like tight knit groups that just work together so well. And so I think that is just, part of being in a church is being in a community. And I think VBS is such a great way to do that, and making the gospel the center of that small week-long community that we have. So yeah, I don't know if that was.
Oh, that's perfect. So,
Yeah.
Rochelle, you're leading an army of volunteers. If you have 80 volunteers, that's larger than most churches in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And you're leading that group of volunteers. So you've been doing this for a long time. You said you've worked in more VBSs than you can count. So I won't even try to give a number. What have you learned about yourself as a leader over the years of working with Vacation Bible School? What are a couple of principles that you've had to apply? Some things that you had to start doing or stop doing in terms of leadership, leading that many people?
Yeah, I think one thing is always expect the unexpected. Whether it is a kid who wants to run away, or to have somebody not show up at the last minute, and just to have that calm spirit. The people that you are leading are going to react the way that you do. And so I think that is a great principle that I've learned, of just remaining calm and being like, it'll be okay. We'll figure it out, and taking the problem on head first. And then I think number 2 principle is just claiming responsibility. Like, we as leaders have the ultimate responsibility for whatever is happening. And VBS is a great responsibility that I take on, and that people take on. And so as things happen, just go towards the problem and don't let it fester. We don't want to step on any toes, or we're like, oh, we're only here for a week, I'll just let it ride. But oftentimes it just needs to be confronted and faced, so that we can move together. And as believers, we have to figure out how to work well with one another, and to come to conflict, and to get conflict resolution as well. And so just taking those things head on, and not, because 5 days can be a really long time if you're fighting with somebody.
That's exactly
So
right.
I think I think those are 2 principles that I've learned.
And you started out referencing the child that runs away, but I think I'm hearing you move now to the volunteers that want to run away, or that you want to run away from.
Yeah.
So, and those conflicts, they do. Have you ever had a volunteer? And by all means, don't reference anything, and your memory may not go back that far.
Yeah.
Has there been a volunteer where you're like, this is just not working out, we have to move you somewhere else, or?
Yeah. I would say, I think I love our youth that help, but I think sometimes, you'll have youth or an adult, and you can just tell that they're just not having a good time. Yeah. I mean, VBS should not only be fun for our students, but it should also be fun for the volunteer. Right. They should be in a spot. And so if they're struggling, I pull them aside and say, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? It's like being aware. I just have to be, I think the other principle, probably, if I had to pick a third one, is like, you have to stay out of the details.
Yeah.
You are, as the leader, you're in every single detail right up until the moment VBS starts. And then the moment VBS starts, you are completely out of the details and have to see the big picture. And that includes that volunteer who looks like they're struggling. And they've had a hard day. Ours is at night. And so they have made a hard day at work, or they may have had a bad conversation with a spouse right before they came. And so just realizing it, having a conversation, and moving them out of that situation into a role that might better suit them. You know, if they're in crafts and they're like, I really just am having a hard time with glue sticks, then move them to snacks, you know, just move them to snacks and it'll be okay. Yeah. But yeah, just being aware and just being really not in the details. If something breaks, if a stage decoration goes down for the count on night one, you should be the one fixing it. It should be somebody else to give that job away, to delegate, because that is going to help you be able to stay above the fray and to see all the things that you need to see as the VBS director.
Rochell, you're describing an incredible leadership experience where so many different leadership aspects are put in a kind of a microcosm, this week moment and everything that went up to it. Do you mentor anyone else? Do you have an assistant, Rochell, someone else who's kind of shadowing you and learning about leadership while you're doing directing VBS?
Yeah, we have, you know, like I said, we've had different people who have helped with VBS. They, you know, and so there's always opportunities to help for that. We have coordinators and deacons. Yep. I have kids deacons that help me, and so those would probably be the people that I'm investing in the most throughout the year. We have they come on for 2 years at a time, and so those are the people that I'm investing in as we talk about leadership and how to run Sojourn Kids better.
That's just multiplying disciples. So the aim of VBS is the child, but oftentimes the adults are impacted. Have you seen situations where you just saw life change with adults through VBS?
Yeah, I mean, just to have the opportunity, you know, I've seen probably the most beneficial thing, you know, for me kind of is that you have somebody who serves on VBS and they're like, man, I love this. Yep. And then they want to participate in other things in Sojourn Kids or in kids ministry in general. And so just seeing them being like, oh, kids aren't scary. Like, this was fun, you know, and just to see their joy, to see the joy. There's tired faces, but man, the joy that they also have. Last year we had a foam party, and to see all the, we had several pastors that came, and to see all them like get in the foam with the kids and like make a mess and do all those things. It's just a really exciting time when, kids can see adults having fun and like putting down their guard and just being a Christian, being a believer with other people and just smiling and having a good time. Kids need to see that, you know. There's the Lifeway research that's out that says, you know, I think it's Flip the Script I've been reading, and it came out within the last year or so, and it says that kids most of the time will stay in church for the majority, like stay in church rather than leave the church as an adult when they have another significant adult relationship that is not their parent. Yep. And VBS is a great time for adults to have those connection points with kids and to create those discipleship opportunities.
Rochell, I saw it with my own daughters when I transitioned out of pastoral ministry to KBC Life, and my girls, you know, they had a great youth group, but what they really missed, I think, were the Shorty and Juanita Hendricks, who would see them on Sunday morning and give them a hug and ask how their life was going, the senior adults that were part of their life. And that is so essential that those relationships are happening in a church. Well, so you know, you're discovering leadership in other people. You're also discovering spiritual gifts in other church members. You're seeing where they're strong and where they can be used. So it's obvious that VBS is a place where many people are just learning about their service and learning where they're really going to contribute well to the body of Christ. So, Rochell, how can a child's exposure to the gospel through VBS actually impact their family that may not be a church family?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I think VBS is a great entry point for a lot of families. It's very low stakes. Parents get to drop off and pick up. You know, they might come in and hear the last song to be a part of pickup, but you know, if we're creating that experience in a child's life as they leave on Friday, they're going to want to come back on Sunday. Mm-hmm. They're going to want to experience and see those teachers again. And so I think that kids have a great influence over parents, and that's why advertising agencies go after them,
That's right.
right? So we can learn from advertising agencies in that we have the opportunity, not in like a crazy way,
Sure.
but like we have the opportunity to see a child involved in church that is not usually involved, and it might take a parent months to come back. But if a kid had a great experience every time they pass your church, every time they see somebody who was at that VBS, whether at school or wherever they're interacting with them, that is another opportunity where that kid's going to be like, Mom, Dad, I really want to go back to such and such church. I really want to go see my friends on Sunday morning. And it's just a great entry point for parents to be involved. I know that we do, we are financially capable, which is an amazing thing to do, like a family fun day on Friday. So the last day of VBS, the last hour, we have food and we have inflatables for our families to participate, and we invite families. And we have a lot of our pastors have kids,
Mm-hmm.
and they are they are able to bring and to meet and to be introduced to those other families. And so a lot of families attend that, and that's a great way for families to be introduced to other pastors and staff and family members, and church members from our community and our church.
So you're describing an incredible experience for the week of VBS, all the work that goes into getting ready for it. It seems like follow up may be one of the most unplanned parts of Vacation Bible School, and I know oftentimes all of that information that was gathered gets put in a bundle and put on a shelf right next to last year's information. How do you help a church think about follow up after VBS?
Yeah, I think follow up is really important. I think that one thing that we have tried in the past, not saying that we're like super successful with it, is just kind of writing thank you cards
Mm-hmm.
and sending it to parents or kids or to whoever. If you like take pictures, we have I've I participate in VBSs where we like print those pictures and hand them out to the kids
Wow.
with like information about the church. Everything is just the touch point, right? If we think about the faith journey as a walk, it's one step at a time. So if salvation is like their first big milestone that we want them to get to, what is that first step to get them to that point? And it might be simply a call to say thanks for letting your kid come.
Mm-hmm.
Here at Sojourn, I'm in a very urban area, so for us, we have something called Mercy Mondays, and we go out once a month every Monday night with our outreach ministry, and we go see and serve the same people over and over and over again in our community and in our neighborhood. And that's a great way. Like next month, Mercy Monday is all about inviting people to VBS,
Wow.
and hopefully in July we'll get to see some of those same people and invite them back to church and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. The thing to do is to think about what your neighborhood looks like.
Yeah.
What does your community look like? And what would work best for you and
Mm-hmm.
for your community? Is it a phone call? Is it a visit? Is it a postcard? Is it, like what is the best? So like brainstorm with your people to find out in your church, because every situation is going to be different. But the point is to follow up some way and somehow. But there's lots of different ideas out there, and I think that nobody gets personal mail anymore. So I think that's like a great way to, we get bills and we get trash mail,
Mm-hmm.
but junk mail, but we don't get personal invitations. So I think that is a great way to invite people as well. So
I just wonder what would happen if those registration cards were copied off and two or three of them given to some of the prayer warriors in the church, maybe some of the senior saints that really feel like they can't do much else, but could pray for that family for a month and pray for that next follow-up
yeah,
contact, just as you've made prayer a central part of your
yeah.
Vacation Bible School. Rochelle, you've been doing it long enough. You've probably seen some lives change through Vacation Bible School. You mentioned crossing over from spiritual death into spiritual life. Can you tell a story of someone that you really saw God get a hold of their life through Vacation Bible School?
Um, you know, I was trying to think about somebody, and there have been just so many people who've like come over throughout the years, but um, I'm trying to think of like one specific
Yeah.
story, and I'm going blank at
Well,
the
it's okay.
moment.
It's okay that there's not, because it's. I mean, there've been many children through your
Yeah.
ministry that have been impacted through just the gospel being shared. Rochelle, I love it that the Bible teaches that the gospel is a seed, and that seed has to be planted. It can be planted in good soil and nurtured, prayed for, watered. Paul said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. And that's really what's happening over and over and over through Vacation Bible School. One of the things you said that really stuck with me was that I meet lots of folks doing door-to-door evangelism or just doing evangelism, and I meet so many people who their only church experience has been through, I went to Vacation Bible School at that church when I was a kid, or I went to the youth group, and they have a really positive view of the church. They're not cynical.
Mhm.
They're not angry at the church. They have a really positive view. The church had an impact in their life. And so to me, that person, they're still a candidate for the gospel, and they had that gospel seed sown when they were early or young. Rochell, one of the things churches have to be super careful of now is screening volunteers. How do you do that, and how do you help churches understand the importance? There can be a mindset in a church that, hey, we know everybody here, everyone here is trustworthy. How do you help a church understand the importance of carefully screening volunteers? Because there are sexual predators who want to have access to children, and they're looking for easy access where they can, and they show up, hey, I'm here to help, I want to serve, I'm friendly. They're not, the stranger danger looking person that we think they might be. How do you help churches think like that?
Yeah, well, I think that you have to just have the stranger danger mindset has to go out the window. I think that's first and foremost. And I think you're right, Todd, is that there are a lot of people who are like, oh, everybody in our church is family. We've known them all since they were small, or we've known them all since we know they're so-and-so or so-and-so, or, like but I think the thing is that we have policies for a reason about church and child protection and all those kinds of things. And if you don't have a child protection policy, I really encourage you to reach out to the KBC. They have great resources on their website. They have the opportunities and they have the discounts and they have the everything right there on the website. You guys know the website by hand. I don't have it at the top of my head.
KYBaptist.org. Type in sexual abuse prevention, church prepared, anything like that. We'll put a link in the notes.
Perfect. But I think that our child protection policies are really helpful. I think that for us, some people, you have to be at the church at least 6 weeks before you can serve in the church, or you have to be a member before you can serve in kids. And so I just say, stick to those policies. And oftentimes when it comes to VBS, we're like, but we need humans,
right.
We need bodies, we need people in these seats, we need adults. And it's like, sometimes you have to sacrifice, and you're like, we'll just not have as many adults. We'll have to make do and cut off our kids' numbers or whatever the case may be. And then run background checks. They are expensive, but they are so necessary. It should be a line item in every budget, whether it's a VBS budget or an operations budget, that it just has to be done, because it's not going to catch everything, but it's going to help deter people. Often, if they're like, oh, they do background checks, let me just bounce, because I don't want to have to they might not want to get caught, or they might be like, I'm not going to mess with them because they have policies. And so it's just really important to stick to whatever your policies are, so that you can keep kids safe, because that is the most important thing.
Rochell, any resources that you'd like to mention to help folks have a more effective vacation or VBS?
Resources. I think that, if you're thinking about leadership, I think leadership is a great resource and a great way as you're leading VBSs. So if you are thinking about, there's one, it's how to lead when you're not in charge. I think that's a great one, because sometimes you're not in charge of the church, but you're in charge of VBS. And so that's a great one to be able to lead VBS well, even though you're not in charge of the whole big picture of things happening in the church.
And I think there's some videos on
KBC
website.
Yeah,
sorry. You produced a video yourself.
I did. There are some VBS training videos on the KBC's website, and they are available right now. We have all sorts of different sessions. There's ones for this year are up and ready to watch and ready to go. And as they have lots of different videos, not only from me, but from great kids ministry directors and leaders and youth ministers from across the state. So those are great training opportunities as well.
Rochelle, last question. This platform is called Leadership Lessons. You're a leader. You're an effective leader. What if you were to think about what has God used most to shape you as a leader, whether it's a person, something about your life, or where you grew up? How would you answer that question? How has God shaped you for leadership?
Yeah, I mean, so many just strong leaders in my life, so many strong women who've been in the gospel for a long time. I think about, you know, pastors' wives when I was a kid who just shaped me and were a part of my life and spent time with me, to youth ministers. And then I think probably when my time that I spent in New Orleans at the mission center that I worked at, there were two directors. The assistant director, she was a NAM missionary, and she just, man, invested in me for years and years. And so she was someone who just taught me a lot about leadership and what leadership looks like. So I just think surrounding, yourself by strong leaders and older people and people who are older than you in leadership and in ministry are just a great way to understand what leadership is. And then, man, like learning from your mistakes.
Yep.
That's been a great way to be a good leader too, is like being, when someone points out like, man, you shouldn't have done it this way, to be like receptive of that, and to be like, to pray and to be like, okay, Lord, show me what I can do to be a better leader, so that next time this event happens, I can respond differently and with a better heart and with a calmer mind. And so I think that, learning from my mistakes and being mentored by women who've been in ministry too have been the two things that have helped me.
Recognizing leadership gifts in other people, pouring into their lives, pointing out those things. Are leaders made, or are they born? And the answer is both. They're born, and there are some leadership gifts, but they're developed through often painful experiences and trying to do leadership. Rochelle, thank you for your ministry at Sojourn, for your larger ministry with Kentucky Baptist and beyond that. And thank you for taking time to join Leadership Lessons to talk about Vacation Bible School today.
You're so welcome. It was fun.